So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
I'm trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
I blame it on industry. I blame it on my own hypocrisy. Miseducation and politicians. No one's willing to step up and speak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the P.A.C.E Radio Show. We are live here at Lifestyle Radio. .ca. Plus, we are being heard live at Spreaker, Shoutcast, as well as over at TuneIn Radio. I'm your host, Al Graham. During our intro music, the Killing Time Band says, more of us need to speak up, and I can tell you tonight, I'm joined by two people who are not being quiet. Tonight, my joint host is a very well-known Alison Myrden, and she has brought us a guest who never stops working to help the victims of cannabis prohibition. But before we learn more, I'm going to have a little talk with Alison about some news, some recent news. You right, Alison?
Hey, everybody. Happy September 14th, 2016. Yay, Wednesday.
Yes, it is Wednesday.
We're halfway through this horrible week, I'm telling you. The pain in my cheek, honestly, Al, the pain in my cheek is so out of control. I am counting the days in every week now, I swear. Anyway, lots going on in this country for sure involving cannabis.
There sure is. So we got three items here. We're just going to run through quickly for some news before we bring our guest in.
You bet.
And one of them was a press release that I received today. From an individual, and it has to do with an announcement that's going to come tomorrow.
Yes, sounds very exciting.
That's right, it sure does, and it has to do with a group of companies and businesses, about 400 of them.
Yes,
joining together to form an alliance to be a voice for people in British Columbia.
Isn't that incredible? I'll tell you, British Columbia and B.C. have been a leader in this issue, as well as Ontario. So we must give credit where credit is due.
That's right.
I think that's amazing that they've all come together. And again, it's like herding cats usually in this issue. And I'm so pleased that so many of them see the same thing. As a possible answer.
It's been a big, when you look at the way some of the how the task force and stuff is going on, we're seeing a lot of people from the cannabis community have been left out. So this is an opportunity. These people are all getting together to speak out, and that's going to be announced tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific.
2 p.m. Pacific, I was just going to say. And you know what? I can't wait out. I definitely am going to be tuned in all over the news and all over the internet to hear what happens.
Yep.
So I can't wait for everything that they actually are going to, speak about to come down. I can't wait for, something to get resolved in this issue and people to finally, again, people in Canada who started this centuries ago to finally have it back in their hands. Literally, that's exactly what I've been working for almost 3 decades for myself.
And then I just want to touch on here is I've seen Tracy Lamori had posted that next Wednesday, the dispensaries in Toronto go before Toronto City Council.
Yes, there's lots going on. Like I said, maybe some of the lawyers in town know a little bit more about that, can speak on that. But, there's so much, as I said. I find personally, Al, dispensaries are indispensable. We have to have some place in order to get our medicine from in the interim, whether we're growing for ourselves and we have to wait for a period of time till it's ready, or whether we have problems with our garden and we have to start again in the interim again, when that sort of thing happens. But dispensaries are necessary.
Yes, they've been very, very important.
Yes.
And talking about dispensing, I see the Chamber of Commerce has spoke up in a Toronto Star article.
Yes.
They want the Ontario government, to allow recreational cannabis to be sold outside of the LCBO.
Yes, by government licensed private retailers, from what I understand.
Yeah, and
So-
it mentions private sector, licensed space, and locally ordinated. There's like 50 or 60,000 members in this chamber. So
Yes.
there's 60,000 businesses that are speaking out and say, hey, we want to be included in this. Just like on the cannabis end of it all, right?
Most definitely, and that would include the craft cannabis businesses, etc.
Yes,
so these sorts of things are very exciting. Again, I want Paul to touch on this a little later for sure.
Yes, we should, because it says a licensing system where a fixed number of points can be done. It can be done privately. They talk about an auction, include the unions, including other people to be.
You bet. You bet.
Yeah, we'll get some information maybe on opinions on that from our guests. And talking about a guest, I'll let you go ahead and introduce him.
Well, an incredible friend of mine whom I've worked closely with for a number of years now, one of the local lawyers in the Toronto area, just an absolute brilliant man. I'd like to introduce my friend Paul Lewin to all of our P.A.C.E Radio listeners. Hello, Paul.
Hey, Alison. Glad to be here.
Hey,
Hi,
thank
Paul.
you so much. Paul, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you coming on. And I myself have done so many of these shows over the decades that I've been on in the public eye that I didn't realize this is your first time ever speaking up on the P.A.C.E Radio show.
Oh, no, Paul's been on the P.A.C.E
Well, not exactly. I have been on
sorry.
a couple of them in the past.
in the past,
I thought so.
Yeah,
I thought I
Paul,
actually had joined.
It's been, Alison, it's been a while.
My
And so
apologies.
I think that we should introduce Paul to the Lifestyle Radio listeners.
And that's exactly my point, Al, I was thinking, Paul, the same thing, that maybe you could give a little bit about yourself to our listeners so that they too can become as intrigued in your work and involved in your work across Canada as the rest of us are. Please speak up, Paul. Introduce yourself.
Well, I'm a criminal lawyer in Toronto with the firm Lewin and Segura. I've been practicing criminal law for over 20 years. The practice is focused on cannabis issues and cannabis consulting. I'm also very active with NORML Canada. I'm the national secretary, and that's something that's very close to my heart. We want to bring about fair and just rules to replace prohibition.
Yes.
And that's proving not so simple, as we all know.
Well, again, Paul, it's funny because you and I have done so much work together over the years at different events and different things going on, and separately, I find that there are so many of us all across Canada and around the world who have taken up this fight that, nobody really that I speak to these days is laying down and taking it anymore. Everybody has something to say. So I'm loving the fact that we are no longer, so segregated and so by ourselves, as we once were. So, but again, Paul, I find, the work you do is incredible, just in the fact alone that you also have been quite the media savvy person over the last number of years yourself. And I was noticing not only, again, have I seen you on shows like The Agenda with Steve P.A.C.E here in Ontario, but I've also, read a number of your articles. And also, I didn't know if you would tell our listeners a little bit about your most recent article that is coming out in the October issue of Skunk Magazine, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah, so it's really about the government discussion paper. So the federal government released this discussion paper on June 30th of this year, and it's really a horrible thing. And the discussion paper they talk about, Alison, you're just saying a moment ago, isn't it great the way we're really, the stigma is going away, and yet the discussion paper repeatedly stresses how especially important it is to prevent the normalization of cannabis and to continue the stigma and prejudice associated with cannabis. I think that may be their goal, and it's an awful goal. I think it's impossible, and the times are changing, and they'll continue to change. But it's rotten that this is really their goal. There's so many awful things about this discussion paper. You mentioned dispensaries. Yes. What they say about dispensaries, they say, And before I go on, the government's saying a lot of feel-good things about how they want to listen to everybody and they want to consult with everybody. I've got this lingering feeling that they're going to say all these nice things and then they're going to come up with these awful rules. And I'll just go to what they said about dispensaries. In effect, they say they essentially say, these things are awful. They don't really explain why they're awful. And they say, but they're so terrible that we might have to allow new dispensaries if for no other reason than to just get rid of the old dispensaries. So, and the new dispensaries, these are, I believe, when you read between the lines and you see what they're really, when you read the whole document in its entirety, they're talking about LP dispensaries, licensed producer dispensaries.
They are.
And, this is in the context, and I heard you in the opening, too, talking about the Project Claudia raids.
Yes.
And, this is a huge issue in Toronto right now. So many dispensaries who are really just filling the gaps, the problems with the law. And the crazy thing is, these are the people who understand cannabis best. These are the people, and they want to put all these people out of a job. They want to throw away all their knowledge and skill, and they want to, I guess, replace it with corporations so they can put their employees in. It's rotten, and it seems driven by politics. It's not even like the old rottenness in which it's just some kind of heartless Stephen Harper at the top who says throw them all in jail. The agenda now seems to be, well, we got to make sure our friends get rich off this thing. And I talk about. I'm acting on some of these dispensary cases, and I can't talk about any of the specifics because there's confidentiality. But I can tell you this: there's an ongoing feel from both the cops and the prosecutors that they don't care that much about these cases. It's obvious that this is a very low priority for them, and it makes you wonder, well, who's driving this? If it's not the cops and it's not the prosecutors, who's so gung-ho on charging these people? And it's driven by politicians.
I was just going to say our federal government and alongside those licensed producers, Paul.
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
In terms of the other stuff, there's the discussion paper. It is riddled with all sorts of fear-mongering about organized crime is everywhere. It's looming around every corner. Home growing, there's more of the rubbish that I thought Allard dispensed with for good, but there's more home growing fears. And then, of course, more so than anything, it's the old, think of the children. What of the children?
Yes.
And when they get into the science on this, and it's my understanding that the science does not establish any causal link between cannabis use and negative outcomes for young people. There's correlations, but there's no causal link. And they seem to concede there's a problem with the science, but then they go on to run crazy with this idea that the children are in danger if we don't have 100 different crazy rules. So.
Funny enough, Paul, we've said for decades now that correlation with this issue of cannabis does not at all mean causation. And one of the questions that I had was actually about the age limit set at 25 versus 19 for alcohol. I cannot wrap my head around this at all, Paul, because nobody, as we all know, has ever died from the use of cannabis. But alcohol has killed so many we can't even count. And here again, the age limit again has been set by the task force here in Canada with our present task force leader, Anne McClellan, rightly saying again that the age limit will be set at 25 again for cannabis rather than, versus 19 for alcohol again. What's your view on this, Paul?
It's mind-boggling that I don't know, aside from the flawed science and absolutely bang on what you just said, that what about alcohol, the far more destructive substance, and tobacco, which can be purchased from 18 or 19 up to 25, depending on the province you're in. But what do they expect is going to happen with 22-year-old who smokes cannabis? Do they think they're going to stop smoking? No. What you're going to do is you're going to have prohibition all over again, only for this limited subset of the population.
And people are going to be hiding again, Paul.
I'm sorry?
People are going to be hiding again.
Yes, exactly. And when they're hiding, they're less safe. They don't know what they're purchasing. They don't know who they're purchasing it from. They're going to be going into back alleys and dealing with dangerous people who might be selling other drugs and have weapons. Why are we shutting them out? Why are we making it unsafe for them?
Yes.
And the crazy thing is, there is consensus around 18-19 in society. I think if you poll people on that, I think a majority would say, yeah, that seems like a reasonable age.
Yes.
That's what we use for alcohol.
That's what I hear.
And that's what the lounges have been using. The vapor lounges have been using that all this time, and they're all self-regulated.
Very good. That's so true. That's so true.
Using that age 19, and they're always talking about the developing brain, but the developing brain with alcohol,
is far more dangerous as far as very true. Again, I find, Paul, the work that you do is so incredible. You mentioned the fight for cannabis, one of the articles that you had been written for the Canadian Bar Association, the Alberta chapter, and I'm telling you, people have to read this article. Again, it's the Canadian Bar Association, The Fight for Cannabis, and it's by you, Paul, written by Paul Lewin. But I want people to know that it has so much in there that people need to be aware of. Again, the fact that the government is going to oppose pardons for nonviolent cannabis offenses and support tougher sanctions for non-compliance when people do, end up winning the right to grow their own and shop at dispensaries, that sort of thing. All of these things, Paul, are so egregious. Once again, not just of the Stephen Harper government and the Conservatives that used to be in power, but now the Liberals. And as I've always said, Paul, Liberal Tory, same old story. That's why, again, I've always fought for the NDP. The NDP speak up for the little people. We just need a new leader. So again, I'm hoping that once the NDP have their say, and I'm not even done with the government yet, Paul. I literally, myself, lobby the government regularly. And one thing that I found just recently is that I've been using other substances rather than just cannabis, because I haven't had any cannabis. And some of these substances are illegal. And my doctors have fully supported my use of them for decades now. But I think I'm going to expand my fight to bring those, substances into it as well. So, again, I know this is just about cannabis, but I want people to know that it is also about quality of life for those of us who use it as medicine. So,
right. Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned the parties, you mentioned the NDP. It wouldn't surprise me if the Conservatives became an ally. They're supposedly the party of smaller government and fewer regulations.
Yes.
I think once they get their head around the idea that cannabis is going to be legalized,
that would be
I've already heard a few good things from a very small smattering of Conservatives around Canada.
Yes,
so,
fiscally.
I think, and I talk about this in the article, I part of what's going to kill the Liberals and make them ruin legalization is going to be all the bad advice they're going to get from all these other authorities. And we're used to the cops saying ridiculous stuff about cannabis, and there's going to be fire chiefs talking about how a plant's going to make your house blow up. There's also the public health professionals, and these people have sort of been our allies for years. And they're smart, thoughtful people who know that prohibition's a terrible idea. But I think there's a little bit, the public health people, there's a lot of good sense to what they talk about, but their model applies much more so with more dangerous substances. But when you're talking about a mild substance of low toxicity like cannabis, the health consequences for society are modest.
Yes.
And so a public health model, public health becomes less of a consideration. And we have to look at other considerations like personal autonomy, which would play a larger role if you're dealing with a very mild substance. So the public health approach, which our friends for many years now I think might be advocating tougher rules, and I think the government's going to use this as a little bit of a fig leaf for them. I think they're going to be married to the LPs and law enforcement.
I can see that.
They're going to use the public health people to sell this crappy plan.
Yeah, no.
I expect, and it just doesn't apply. It's a great idea if you're talking about heroin, but if you're talking about cannabis, we don't need public health. We don't need limited store hours. We don't need tough THC limits. We don't need caps. You can only buy 3 grams at a time. There's no limit on how much alcohol I can buy.
Exactly.
All right, guys. I'm
not going to go on
here.
a cannabis binge. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in here so we can go to a commercial break.
You bet.
All right. And when we go to break, we're going to hear from Les Mosquitoes and their song Justice, and then Alison, myself, and our guest Paul Lewin will get back after the break. We'll continue our conversation. You're with the P.A.C.E Radio Show here at lifestyleradio.ca.
All right.
Here at Lifestyle Radio.
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
The following is a public service announcement from the Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, we feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled, or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet. www.canadiantherapeuticCannabisPartners.com, on Facebook, CTCP Society, or search Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners.
This is Al Graham of the P.A.C.E Radio Show. Are you keeping pace, as in keeping people advocating cannabis education? If you're not, and you're a cannabis consumer, then why not? Others are working hard every day to help educate people about cannabis so you can enjoy your daily 420. Get involved and speak out. Be loud and proud so that you can keep pace. Tune into the P.A.C.E Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear about people advocating cannabis education here on lifestyleradio.ca.
Growing your own vegetables, flowers, or even medicinal plants can be a challenge without the right equipment and proper know-how. At BMA Hydroponics, not only are they your urban horticultural experts and suppliers, but their staff holds the customer's needs paramount to making a sale. Family-owned with decades of experience and knowledge, they offer free advice in person, by phone, or email. BMA Hydroponics wants to ensure you have the advice you need, which is why you'll find tips and tricks on different ways to grow, like wick, ebb and flow, drip, or aeroponic system, as well as other helpful links at bmahydroponics.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, just let them know, and they'll do everything they can to get what you're looking for. At BMA Hydroponics, each staff member also possesses a federal exemptee MMAR license, making their strong suit empathy, experience, and dedication to their customers. Because when you know how to grow, you'll have results that make you proud. BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario. Visit bmahydroponics.com.
BMA offers cannabinoid testing, so if you want to prove you've got good medicine, head to BMA Hydroponics and prove it.
Welcome back to the P.A.C.E Radio Show. We are live here at lifestyleradio.ca as well as at Spreaker. And a big shout out to those who are listening to other audio outlets afterwards, such as Mixcloud and our friends at iHeartRadio. Are you a grassroots advocate? If you are and you can't, and you want to keep up with the news and like to share educational information, then I'd like to suggest that you check out Grassroots Advocates, the little monthly news magazine that P.A.C.E puts out. Not only is there news, but there's also recipes. We have a cannabis directory that includes compassion centers, signing clinics. It'll have the links to the ACMPR, the new program here in Canada.
Yes.
And if this is something that you're looking for, then go to the PACE-online.ca website and click on the Grassroots Advocate button, and you can get a free monthly subscription. Tonight on the P.A.C.E Radio Show, I'm joined by our guest, lawyer Paul Lewin of the law firm Lewin and Segura, plus my joint host, the very busy Alison Myrden.
Hey, everybody.
Alison and Paul, before the break, you guys were talking about Paul's article that he had in the Canadian, that was published by the Canadian Bar Association,
yes,
on the fight for cannabis.
Yes.
Paul, what I was wondering, we're hearing about all this talk about legalization and everything, and we've heard that there's an announcement going to come out in the spring of 2017, so that's the spring. Is it more to be expected to be just basically information, and it's not going to be right out legalization? It's going to be maybe about more how they look at doing it, and we could still be another year or two away?
I think it'll be draft legislation. So there will be details, but it won't be the law. So it won't be legal for a long time. So they'll introduce the draft legislation, and then it's going to go through committees, and it's going to move at a snail's pace. And but it'll be at that point that we're going to realize, we'll know this thing's not going to go well. So that's
it could be slowed down through Parliament itself, just through all the discussions and in the committees and everything that. So we could be some time away still.
Yeah, I think they're going to try and make this law before the next election. So they're going to want to go in with this saying they're the ones who did it. But we brought in such a tough regime that we had the approval of law enforcement. They were on our side. And so no one can accuse us of being soft on crime.
Yes.
And these are politicians.
No, not with their punitive approach.
That's their end game, is winning elections. So,
yes.
In that article, I think you also touch on things like some of the things that law enforcement could lose through legalization.
Oh, yeah, this is not good for them at all. This has been a great tool. I don't know how many cases I've had because someone in the car smoked a joint and the car was pulled over, and then they get to search everybody in the car and the trunk.
Yes.
The smell has led them into so many pockets, trunks, and houses It's ridiculous. It's been kids on the street, maybe teenagers or young adults smoking a joint in maybe an underprivileged part of town. And the cops, they don't care about the joint, but it means they can search everybody who's there. So, I mean, this has been an incredible search tool. The crazy thing, too, is they search and then they find something else. And often the person isn't even charged with the cannabis offense. It's just it's a tool that allows them to pry open people's private zones. And that's been an awful misuse of this for years.
I was in Oshawa at a rally one time, and I wasn't even medicating, and the officer asked me for my license, and he was basing it on because I was wearing a hoodie with cannabis leaf on the back.
Unbelievable.
So yeah, exactly. So that's based back to what you were saying about the smell or whatever. It gives them a reason.
Hey, I'm a retired law enforcement officer myself in corrections. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So,
and the sad part is that we are low-hanging fruit because of the smell.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of the things that the Liberals could do? That
the Liberals should do.
Yeah, exactly.
Should do.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's actually how
what
I have
they should
worded
do.
it.
I love that question. So, of course, they should permit home growing. And, I mean, we know Allard forced home growing for medicinal users. And I'm guessing what's going to come out is some weird system in which medical users will be permitted to grow at home, but recreational users won't. Of course, there's no dangers for anyone growing at home. You can do it safely. I shouldn't say there's no dangers, but you can certainly do it safely and have no dangers as long as you're regulated. You follow whatever rules they set down, whatever reasonable regulations. I'd like to see cooperative growing permitted, where perhaps a space could be made available, just like there's cooperative other types of gardens. And so there could be some community land and a whole bunch of
gardens. I was just going to say.
And there's a million different models for cooperative growing, but it's essentially people of modest means who maybe they've got a bit of a green thumb and they'd like to grow a bit for themselves. So everyone gets their own little plot and everyone contributes a small amount of money, or maybe even some form of grow. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see all these mom and pop cannabis enthusiasts not put out of business. So, I mean, we talked about dispensaries, and these people would so enrich the industry. It would be all these micro artisans would bring their craft cannabis, their unique types of strains to market, and they have such a passion for what they do. It would make it. It would really make it something special. It would enrich the market. Unique. But instead, I mark my words, it's going to be Walmart cannabis for everybody. And that's the government's plan. But I'd like to see this craft cannabis niche permitted, and that would mean dispensaries of all sizes, bigger companies, medium-sized companies, and even small little stores. Something for everybody. And just have reasonable regulations.
Now, that's only for social consumers, isn't it, Paul? Is that only for social consumers, Paul?
Well, that's another thing, is we have to distinguish between social and medical. And medical can't get thrown under the bus because recreational is legal.
Well, it's part of the task force. That's part of the task force thing, is determine to come up with either should there be one system or two.
Yes. Now, mind you, again, I know, Paul, that my particular situation, I'm 150 grams a day, and I'm hoping to start my garden soon. And I'm not anticipating there'll be any problems because I've been at such high numbers for decades now. But also, can certainly, explain my usage to a T, down to the last particular flake of cannabis, pretty much. But anyway, I am wondering again, does that put people like myself at the higher limits and higher end perspective of the spectrum in jeopardy?
Well, it shouldn't. I mean, that would be wrong. The new ACMPR, the new rules they've brought out. There's no plant count. There's no plant cap. There's no light cap.
I didn't see one.
I mean, everybody's got a different health situation, and they consume it in a different way. There's, for medicinal users, there's tax implications. They should be treated differently than recreational users.
Yes, good point.
Whether there's a cap for recreational users for home growing, that cap should not be applied. I mean, you're a perfect example of that, Alison. You can't have caps for medical users. There should be some form of accommodation. I mean, when you go out right now, I mean, in Ontario, they've got these new anti-vapor laws in which you can't vapor lounges are going to be out of business soon.
And what are we going to do there, Paul? That's another fight. See, again, LPs, dispensaries, exactly, Bill 178 here in Ontario. Licensed producers, dispensaries, vapor lounges, patient grows, all of these things are, you know, I'm not so worried about licensed producers, but the other three I am concerned about being in jeopardy. You know, dispensaries, the right to grow, etc. All of these things, as I said, the people, you know, need to take care of ourselves, but we also need to take care of each other. You know, and I don't think the government is understanding that part of this end of the issue. You know, that there are so many
I'd expect to see, it wouldn't surprise me if they had something that did not permit public smoking, public consumption of cannabis.
Really?
And I mean, that's crummy, but for a recreational user, that's one thing. But for a medicinal user, this is crazy. Are you supposed to never leave your home? Is that? And then
that's
if you live
Paul.
So they may turn around and say, well, you can't walk down the street with a beer. That's drinking in public.
But you know what, again, gentlemen, if I find, and everybody listening, if I find as a patient that I'm having and experiencing this stupid violent pain that I have in my face now, doesn't matter where I am or what I'm doing, I'm going to light up, eat a cookie, put oil on my tongue, everything under the sun that I can think of to stop this pain.
I could see them doing that for recreational purposes, but for a medical thing, you have to probably flash your ID, your pass.
Yes, that's very true. I hope it doesn't end up, you know, involving medical patients, and I really hope.
But I mean, that's the way it is right now. Is that you can't vaporize anywhere?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's very true, Paul.
So they're not allowing these vapor lounges to continue. So anyway, hopefully there is that accommodation. As well as there should be workplace accommodation too for medicinal users.
Yes.
So there's a lot of aspects. The more you think about it, you can see clearly medical's different. In terms of the system, what else I'd like to see? I'd like to see, in terms of getting into the marketplace, it shouldn't be. I mean, those LP rules, the whole LP application process, they're opaque standards that shift over time. It's not.
Yes.
It's hard to know what the rules are, and many people have sat in this queue to become a licensed producer. They've got a facility, they're sitting there, and they can't get. They haven't been approved, and they've been in line for for a very long time, for certainly years. I mean, these days people can easily expect 2 years and several $1 million. These rules are overkill. The standards, the barriers to entry should be reasonable and comparable to other similar industries like wine, beer, or natural health products.
And that's exactly how I feel. Now, again, touching on that particular issue, how do you feel, Paul, about possibly, you know, again, the Liberals and Kathleen Wynne stepping up here in Ontario, and what we were talking about earlier with the fact that they're trying to legalize and regulate here in Ontario, possibly using anything other than, you know, a liquor store. How do you feel about that? You know, how do you feel about it?
I mean, I think the liquor store idea may be dead now. I mean, so many people have come out against it. The idea of putting cannabis on the shelf next to the whiskey bottles is about as stupid idea as I could imagine. And you know, they're just greedy for the money. And,
Yes.
and I mean, there they would not just be getting the money; they'd get the entire profit. I mean, shoot, they could set up their own LP and grow their own cannabis, and I mean, they would make a crazy amount of money. But I think a lot of people would be hostile to that. And you know what I predict too? I'll say this before my hour is up: is although I expect terrible rules, I think
Yes.
that the cannabis community, I mean, we're so resilient, and
Yes.
I mean, civil disobedience is just in our DNA. Just because the government comes out and says, "Oh, don't worry, the Royal Bank is going to be selling cannabis from now on, so all of you can just stop what you did before and get into some new business." No one's going to listen to them, and people are going to keep growing. They're going to keep extracting. They're going to keep selling.
They are, Paul.
Eventually, sorry, Alison?
Oh, I said they are.
Yeah. So,
Right.
and eventually the government, there's going to be more litigation, and there's going to be protests and conflict and legal uncertainty. But I think over years, gradually the government will say, you know what, maybe this 25 isn't such a smart age, and maybe this idea of having only LPs being allowed to have a dispensary isn't such a great idea.
Smart either.
And maybe we should allow recreational users to grow their own, because they seem to be doing it anyway.
Yes.
So I think, I think the rules will
Paul, I
eventually
just
make
love
sense.
you. You are so on par with every single thing I fight for.
Okay, I gotta jump in. It's commercial time again.
Awesome, you bet, doll.
Okay, and we're gonna hear some more from Les Mosquitoes, and then Alison and I will continue our conversation with lawyer Paul Lewin. You're
Right
listening to
on.
the P.A.C.E Radio Show here at lifestyleradio.ca.
Right on.
Please hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Every soul is equal. Overcome the system and rise above the evil. The poor keep getting stronger, and the rich can't feed the younger.
Growing your own vegetables, flowers, or even medicinal plants can be a challenge without the right equipment and proper know-how. At BMA Hydroponics, not only are they your urban horticultural experts and suppliers, but their staff holds the customer's needs paramount to making a sale. Family-owned with decades of experience and knowledge, they offer free advice in person, by phone, or email. BMA Hydroponics wants to ensure you have the advice you need, which is why you'll find tips and tricks on different ways to grow, like wick, ebb and flow, drip, or aeroponic system, as well as other helpful links at bmahydroponics.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, just let them know, and they'll do everything they can to get what you're looking for. At BMA Hydroponics, each staff member also possesses a federal exemptee MMAR license, making their strong suit empathy, experience, and dedication to their customers. Because when you know how to grow, you'll have results that make you proud. BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario. Visit bmahydroponics.com.
BMA offers cannabinoid testing, so if you want to prove you've got good medicine, head to BMA Hydroponics and prove it.
The National Task Force on Medicinal Cannabis is a group of not-for-profit organizations dedicated to influencing government policy with factual evidence. Our mission is to ensure that a constitutional medical program is developed that will address the concerns of all Canadians that require therapeutic cannabis. The task force is looking for dedicated people who are willing to contribute to our cause. We have formed this task force to foster a unified approach and focus on lobbying the federal government and Health Canada. We represent the combined expertise of thousands of patients with more than a decade of experience. As a task force participant, you, your business, or your group will have an opportunity to show that you care and offer your unique skills to promote the cause. If you would like to get involved, go to medcanataskforce.org. That's medcanataskforce.org and use the Contact Us link to get started. Help us help you.
Tune into the P.A.C.E Radio Show and catch Kim Cooper, Debbie Stoll-Skiffen, or Alison Myrden, along with myself, Al Graham, as we talk to Canadian and international cannabis advocates who are working hard to help patients and to end cannabis prohibition. Catch us live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at lifestyleradio.ca.
Canada. The time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
Welcome back. Radio show. We are being broadcasted here live at lifestyleradio.ca as well as at Spreaker. And podcasts, as I mentioned earlier, you can catch them at YouTube, iHeartRadio, and other social media. Tonight we feature the music of the Quebec-based band known as Les Mosquitoes. And we had their song Justice, and they have some other cannabis songs. And you can catch them at YouTube. That's usually where I find some of the music that I play here. Tonight on the P.A.C.E Radio Show, I'm joined by our guest Paul Lewin of Lewin and Segura, a law firm from Toronto, and my joint host Alison Myrden. Alison, Paul's got maybe 10 minutes left. We know that he's very busy, and he has, as I said earlier, he's hardworking. He's working for people in the cannabis who are victims of cannabis prohibition. So we only got 10 minutes. So I'm just going to quickly touch on what we're talking about before the break, and that was the LCBO. Paul, you mentioned that it may not go away in the direction of it actually being sold in the LCBO. Kathleen Wynne has talked about it as being maybe controlling the regulations. So, I guess I'm sort of looking at it as could we come up with it? Would it be a system?
That's just in Ontario, though.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Would it be a system maybe where they regulate bars and stuff when it comes to serving alcohol? Could they have a system where they're going to come up with lounges that would be able to serve cannabis down the road?
Well, I mean, could they? They could, and I mean, would that work? Yeah, absolutely. Would they? I think there's no way we're getting that in the beginning. And I should say, although I said before the break that the LCBO model might be dead in the water, one way Wynne could make that work is if she segregated cannabis from alcohol. So there were LCBO stores that only sold cannabis.
Like a CCBO or something, Cannabis Control Board of Ontario.
Yeah. So, I mean, that could happen. And this fight, so to answer your question, Al, I mean, yeah, that could happen. First of all, that's a great idea. Will it happen? I don't think it'll happen for a while. I think it'll eventually come, but not for a while. And I think that the provincial government trying to hoard all the profits is something that everyone should be concerned about. That is going to be, I mean, that's where the real action could end up being, is with the provincial government.
Yes.
Although I will say this too, that I don't think the feds are going to relinquish jurisdiction lightly.
I was just going to say, are they going to give it up, Paul? Honestly, I don't think the federal government would like to have their toes stepped on like that.
Yeah, and how the law is jurisdictionally is if they've got, as long as it's a criminal law matter that with a criminal law, with a penalty attached, a prohibition and a penalty, and what's a criminal law matter is very broad, can be defined in a very broad manner. So there's a lot of things that fit under this heading. So if the Trudeau government says, listen, we're ending prohibition, but only because we have to restrict this, and punish people even more tough than we did before. Which is the language they're using. That allows them to maintain greater jurisdiction. And they could say, listen, your parameters are only so much, and we're going to keep certain matters are going to remain criminal across the country. So,
again, Al, it's funny. I don't know if that was your last question, Al, but I was going to ask something similar to Paul, in so much so that legalization means home gardens, dispensaries, vapor lounges. What's in the future in your perfect world? That was going to be a similar question I was going to ask.
Well,
all of those things. That absolutely, it should be widely available. The beauty of this too, like it's of course it's a plant, and it's kind of a substance. Like you don't need a lot of money to grow it. It's often used by marginalized members of society. Legalization shouldn't be a process whereby this becomes only for the middle class and up.
No, I agree. Or upper class, really, Paul, because patients like us already have been pushed out of the loop of being, able to afford anything. As I said, I've been without for years because of that exact fact. I can't afford to shop at an LP or even a dispensary. I'd love to. I support them. And they've helped me out quite a bit, but I don't go there regularly. I couldn't afford to.
Right. And I mean, when that happens to a medicinal user, that's unconstitutional. Yes. When it happens to a recreational user, it's not. There's no constitutional issue. You have no right to have recreational substances.
No, of course.
But it's just unfortunate. And I think if there was that the government and everybody involved should just dial back their financial expectations.
Yes,
and maybe
exactly.
If they weren't expecting to make quite so much money off it, there isn't going to be that much tax money. Everyone's not going to become super rich.
Exactly.
And you know what we do too? If we keep the price down, we kill the black market.
We certainly do. Street market is gone, Paul, and that's again something I've been working at for decades. Very smart.
But when we keep the price high, if this is only going to be for the super rich selling it to the rich, then the black market's going to stick around.
Exactly. So, we'll never be rid of the street market, ever, ever, ever.
Ontario saw that years ago when they raised the prices of the tax on cigarettes,
tobacco. Exactly.
And everybody started into the.
Everybody I know on the reserves used to sell it for next to nothing because of the fact that they couldn't get the brand name anymore because it was too expensive.
Yeah, and the government had to back down. Exactly. And I know they talk big numbers down in the U.S. with Colorado and stuff, but those people too are also being hit with like 30% taxes. Right?
Funny enough, I was just talking to a friend in that same topic of conversation today about legalization of cannabis in Colorado. And he felt now that Colorado had rushed into things, this particular man, and he felt that things were not going the way that they had wanted things to as a particular state, and that they felt that Canada should again take their time. I tend to feel more like Paul, in so much so that these problems are going to exist anyway, and what we need to do is find a way to rectify them and stop them from happening, or redirect people from doing these exact things that are getting them into these problems that they're dealing with as we speak.
So sorry, Alison, I'm not sure I understood your question.
No, I find, Paul, that it's a little frustrating, not only for, patients like myself, but just for regular everyday cannabis consumers, whether they be of age, at the age. But I just feel that, again, like you, and so much so, I feel that they should just be able to grow and take care of themselves and tend their own needs and have mom and pop dispensaries, that sort of thing, and not be, not have the country, let alone the government, take such a punitive approach to, this full idea of legalization.
Yeah. It'll change, and it's going to be good old civil disobedience that's going to force them to change. And that's the great thing about the cannabis community. As a lawyer, I can't recommend people break the law, but as an activist, that's I can certainly recognize that's brought about a lot of change for in the cannabis world.
You know what, Paul? I just want to say quickly, Al, sorry that you might be saying this too, that every single win we've had and so far in the government has been through the courts, Paul, with this issue of cannabis, and especially as medicine. Yeah. So, that's how we're going to continue to make change. And we need people to get up and speak up exactly like you, Al, myself, everybody involved in the show, and so many other things around the country and around the world do. We need these collective voices.
I'm going to jump in here because Paul has an appointment. He has to meet with somebody and has to go. So I want to give him a minute or two here to do a shout out, Alison. How people, if you got a website, Paul, if you know your website address and that.
All right. Well, the website is lewinsagara.ca, Sagara, Sagara. And then, of course, I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't give a shout-out to NORML Canada, NORML.ca. We've got a conference coming up October 22 and 23 at the Karma Cup. We got all kinds of illustrious people coming. We're going to have a panel on legalization. We're hoping to bring in great panels, a civil disobedience panel, a panel on the dispensary raids, a craft cannabis panel. Really looking forward to it, and we're very proud to be holding it at the Karma Cup. In terms of the center of the cannabis community, it's with the growers and the dispensaries and the people, cannabis people who are being shut out. It's not at some sort of LP-sponsored event.
Thank goodness, Yeah,
exactly.
So it's a delight being on with everybody.
Paul. Yeah, well, Paul, I'd like to thank you for coming on and talking to our listeners about the stuff you've been doing, the writings, the articles, giving us insight.
Interviews,
and your opinions on things.
Everything.
Yes, that's right.
We adore you, Paul.
And when you leave, Paul, we'll promote you some more.
Cool. All right. All right. Well, thank you again for having me.
Take care, Paul. Thanks so much, and have a great evening.
Bye for now.
Yeah, bye now. Okay, Alison, we got Paul to mention his website. I know that the two of us were looking at it earlier, and we see he's we talked about his article there on the fight for cannabis, but Paul's very active as a writer. He has a blog there.
He is incredibly active, Al. Paul doesn't stop. He's not just a criminal attorney, for those of our listeners who are aware of, again, this gentleman. But Paul does a lot out there.
I remember one of the first times I met him, it was at the Global Marijuana March in Toronto.
Right.
And he was speaking, and I looked at him, and I thought, oh, that's you? You always picture, maybe people would be certain ways, just...
True. Paul's a clean-cut, good-looking young fellow.
Yeah.
Big surprise, you're right, especially in this movement years ago.
That day he was dressed like everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he's been, he gets involved in those things, and he's in the past in my writings. I used to write for Cannabis Digest. He got involved in that. Answered questions and stuff for me, so he gets involved in things, and it's nice. It was nice to have him on the radio show tonight.
I'm so glad he could come on too, Al. Honestly, again, I know a lot of people know this about me because I talk about it all the time, but I don't do anything without all of my whole team of lawyers whom I'm in touch with, Paul being one of them. And Paul not only is a good friend, but has given me countless hours of legal advice over the years. And literally, again, we've crossed paths so many times. I just absolutely adore him. But again...
some people, maybe some people might not know Paul's name, but I bet you if you tell them that he was the lawyer behind the Matt
Myrna's fight,
that's
exactly.
Right.
There have been many that he's been involved with. But also, I don't know if you even know this, Al, but Paul Lewin was a student of my main lawyer, Professor Alan Young's at Oskin Hall in Toronto. So that's where Paul learned, I guess, his end of the craft of being an attorney. So, and again, that's one reason, again, I absolutely adore Paul, is because he's so much, again, in thought like Alan and so many of the other lawyers, Eugene Oscapella. And I mentioned this to you as well, Al. I definitely want to have Eugene on the show. I was just with him in Ottawa, and we were just out for dinner, just discussing some things. And I'd love for him to tell you a little bit about what's going on. But I honestly, when I was in Ottawa, I think I was there 3 days, and Eugene had done over 30 interviews from all around the world just on drug law reform in those 3 days that I was in Ottawa. So, I love Eugene for the fact that he, like Alan and Paul and John Conroy and Kurt Tusaw and so many of these lawyers that we work so closely with, they're not only well-spoken, but they're very articulate and very active in the issue of advocacy for, cannabis legalization.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And it's great to see that they're all involved, and
yes.
To be able to talk to them like we do here on the radio show. Now, there's one other thing that I wanted to. It's not cannabis related, but it is something that is close to you. And it's something you've talked about, and you talked about it tonight as well. And that is something that we saw the government announce about heroin.
Yes. Actually, again, for those of you who are not aware, I have had heroin as a standing prescription at my local hospital for almost 3 full decades because of this violent, excruciating pain I have right now. It's just stupid in my left cheek. But bottom line, I was actually at one point using things such as raw opium. Recently, I actually went back to something that I had used over a decade ago and had tried for relief through a friend, and that was psychedelic mushroom tea. Mm-hmm. I had actually had Gary make me a tea because I could not take this violent pain I deal with 24 hours a day and have for almost 3 decades again, every day. I finally drank the tea that Gary made me and ate the mushrooms, and sadly enough, God, none of the fun things happened to me afterward, but boy, oh boy, I had no pain for almost 3 days straight. So, and that's unheard of when I have it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and have for almost 30 years. So as I said, Al, my great-grandfather suffered from this same pain, but they treated him with liquid gold rather than substances like heroin and cocaine and stuff.
I was involved with in a small city near me where they were involved with drug injection needle help and stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I look at Insight and the wonderful work that they've been doing out there in Vancouver, and more of those are going to become available across the country, Toronto, Montreal, and stuff. And I know I've seen some people comment in a negative way about the government, coming up with the heroin end of it all. But with the Insight situations in them, it's the heroin that's coming off the street. And if you can get, no different. You get, people say don't get the cannabis off the street, get the stuff.
No, that's very true.
And if people who are addicted to heroin, if they can get a clean source like through the government, and they're injecting in places where they have the care and everything, then this is all a good thing. I look at it. You're not picking up people out of the back alleys, and some of these and these people can still become functional within society.
But Al, can I tell you that if you are somebody who ever chooses to consume heroin and becomes a problem, and you're in a back alley with a handful of friends because it is illegal, if, God forbid, you start to overdose, all of your friends, my friend, are going to run away. Not only because they don't want to be arrested, and you will die. They don't want to be arrested, but they also don't want to be around if somebody screams that there's a problem.
Yeah.
So as far as things go, in that situation, I do find that, like I said, with things like heroin and cocaine and stuff like that, they definitely need to be regulated through a professional. And I would say a medical health professional. And that's why I like the SISs, the safe injection sites, and things going up all over Canada now. And literally now, sprouting up in North America in certain places, in the U.S. But bottom line, we have to do something. I've said this again for decades, Al. People are dying unnecessarily due to all of these substances being allowed to be in control of the street, or for the cartels to be controlling them.
Well,
we don't want that.
Even look at right here in North America, there's a situation with the opiate drugs,
Certainly is. Fentanyl's a huge problem all over in the Niagara region, just close to me here. There's a huge problem with fentanyl overdoses and people dying, and those sorts of things could completely be avoided if they were treated differently. And funny along the same lines, I just read this article earlier about how, I can't even remember where the police force is, but some police force here in Canada, maybe an Ontario police force, the police officers are now being actually suggested that they carry naloxone, which is something that they can literally bring somebody back up from a heroin overdose from in seconds by giving them this medication, this naloxone. Yeah. So these sorts of things, the injections, if they can get this information out there and, be privy to some of these things that, like naloxone, that are being made available to, safe injection sites and heroin users and things. I think that's a huge step in society in the right direction.
Yeah, it is. It is, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Alison. Well, it's shortly after 9. It was great to have Paul in.
I'm
really talk to us. So I guess it's shout out time for yourself as well. Have you got somebody or some place?
Oh, hey, honey, you know what? There are a few angels who have really been helping me a lot lately, and I just got a message from one of them from the other end of Canada today telling me that there is some medicine on the way. And I don't know if that angel ever happens to listen to this show, but I know that if they do, they not only have extra feathers in their wings tonight, but boy, oh boy, are they going to be greeted at the Golden Gates with open arms.
Talking about you don't know whether to listen to the show or not. What were you telling me earlier about when you trip to Ottawa?
Funny enough, I was in Ottawa. I was telling you, Al, and a couple of different people came out to me, and both of them had said that they caught me on the P.A.C.E radio show, and all of us doing our thing out in the Ottawa area, which is miles. I don't even know, probably 4 or 5 or 6 hours at least away from where I live. Yeah. So it was a bit of a surprise. But then again, I was reading Kim Cooper's comment online just the other day about Sam, what was his name? Not Sam, the baseball player.
Billy Sample.
Billy Sample?
Yes, correct.
Is that his name? Billy Sample. Yes. Billy, shout out to Billy Sample. Hey, and all the sports teams out there that tune into iHeartRadio, we love you guys, and we're all on the same page. And be sure to pick up this month's issue of High Times, because NFL and cannabis is everywhere in it.
Billy Samples was with the Texas Rangers. Yeah, Texas
now
Rangers.
I know. Sports, though, I don't honestly, know myself the statistics on sports and athletes that consume cannabis, whether it be socially or, for reasons like ourselves and injuries and things. Bottom line, shout out to all of them, and hey, peace out, because we know you're watching.
And don't forget to catch Paul's article in Skunk Magazine as well.
Yes, huge article in October, Skunk Magazine. Just coming out. And again, I want to make sure that people again that are listening check out the Canadian Bar Association and Paul Lewin's most recent article from Alberta called The Fight for Cannabis. Please check that out. Paul Lewin.
Okay, just a reminder, as always, I'll be back next Wednesday. Joint host then will be Kim Cooper.
You're awesome.
And we'll be promoting somebody, talking to somebody out there who's hardworking. Kim's. I just didn't ask her beforehand who her guest was. That's all.
Surprise.
Because I know she always has somebody lined up.
Awesome.
Awesome. That's right. You can find P.A.C.E on Twitter at P.A.C.E Radio, and we are also on Facebook. So you can go there, hit the like button. All our past shows are all listed there. Just look for you'll see a picture of the guest, and you can read some information about the interview. is. And actually, the last interview with Dana Larson, he offered a gift. If you listen to the broadcast, he's got some special words for you. And we can also be found online at pace-online.ca. Thank yous go to our sponsors at BMA Hydroponics. I got together with Ross and Al there just recently.
Excellent.
The other Al.
Yeah.
Also, CC, there's a lot of us.
There are.
CC Nexus, Canada's largest seed wholesaler. They can be found at ccnexus.global.
Hey, can I just say quickly, huge shout out to CC Nexus as well for all the seeds you guys gave me. I am so getting ready to rock and roll and get those in the ground soon enough. Love, huge, you guys. Big.
That's right. And your new grower, I'm sure you would like them as well.
Yes, well, yeah, you betcha.
Thank you always goes out to L Rap at Lifestyle Radio.
Always.
A big thank you to Paul Lewin of the Toronto law firm Lewin and Segura. Check them out. Cannabis law. Paul pushes on or specializes on that. And our big thank you to you, Alison, for appearing tonight.
Hey, anytime, darling.
And a big thank you to you, our listeners. People who are always listening to the program, we appreciate it. As Alison mentioned, people come up to her and said that they recognized her from the radio show and had heard some shows. So.
Hey, I know you too. Thank you so much, Al.
That's right. And good night. Thank you. And good night to everybody.
Take care. Right on, everybody. Have a great night. Talk soon, Al. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily